Alrighty. Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is David McCaleb with Bankers Insurance, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar on how to find and keep good employees. And so this is a really pertinent webinar. We're excited to get into it, really pertinent, especially in today's job market. And we're going to be going over details such as some employee retention tools and how compensation can fit into all of this. And so we're excited to get into it. So presenting today again is Jamie Hasty from Sesco Management Consultants. And now we've partnered with Sesco for many, many years. And just as a short intro, Sesco has been around since, well, a long time, since 1945. They are a national human resources consulting firm. And I believe that makes them like one of, if not the oldest, longest standing, I should say, human resource consulting firm in the nation.
Yep.
So each client, every one of you can access Sesco through your sales exec, and I encourage you to do so. So if at the end of this webinar, you've still got some additional questions, reach out to your sales exec, drop them an email and just say, hey, how do I access Sesco? And we can set you up with them. And so you have limited email and phone support through Sesco, courtesy of Bankers. So a little housekeeping before I turn it over to Jamie. Yes, this webinar is being recorded, and I'm going to send it out to everybody at the end. And make sure you place your questions as you go. Like, we will have a question and answer session at the end, of course. But when you think of them, just go ahead and place them in the chat. So there's a chat box at the top. Just click on that, and we'll get to your questions either as we're going through it or at the end. So with that introduction, Jamie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, David. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back. As David mentioned, it is a tough market. Everybody, regardless of what industry you are in right now, is struggling to find talent, but is also struggling to keep their talent in this crazy market that we have going on. So today we're going to talk about how do we find and keep. Some of it's going to be going back to basics because the basics and best practices have not changed. But we're going to look at some other things that are going on as well that are particularly relevant in this market of the Great Resignation and quiet quitting, right? Those are two terms that we've heard a lot over the last year. Quiet quitting is more of the more recent phrase that people are using, and it's true. But at first, I want to start off with talking a little bit about your employer brand. Why does that matter? When we look at the job market, pretty much everybody is applying online in some form or fashion. LinkedIn, Indeed, I guess Monster's still quasi-relevant. And a lot of these online search engines, obviously, cross-post. Some people still may be using social media like Facebook to search and find individuals. So in the age of all of this technology, it's, I shouldn't say unlikely, but it is not nearly anywhere as common as somebody walking in and saying, hey, do you have an application? Hey, are you hiring? Certainly some of your smaller businesses may still see that from time to time, but really it's all online, right? Which is great because it can help us streamline. We have everything in one place. We're able to kind of look at all of these resumes, but with the online models that we're seeing, employees, candidates are also Googling you. So when we talk about your employer brand, and I'm not focusing on the goods and the services that you offer or the products or that sort of thing, because that's pretty obvious, right? We are looking at the line of sight of the organization. Why does the organization exist outside of the obvious things? Because 86% of all candidates are looking at your company reviews and ratings before they apply to a job. They're going to PayScale, they're going to salary.com, they're going to Glassdoor, they're looking at Google reviews, looking at not just employee reviews and information that employees are anonymously posting, but they're also looking at what your client base is posting. Are there any things that jump out to them? Does your brand align with their individual core values, the things that are important to them as a person? Does your organization, get involved in philanthropic events? And are those events tied into a nonprofit that's important to them? This is a complete shift in how individuals have been historically searching for jobs. It really is more so about this online presence. What is the organization as a whole doing to be diverse and inclusive? Particularly when we're looking at women and minority groups, 76% of them are considering that. They're looking at those reviews. 92% of people are going to consider changing jobs if a role with a company has a better reputation or a stronger reputation than the company they're currently working for. Okay. So your brand matters. Online presence matters, and making sure that that's accurately reflective of the organization. So things that we want to pay attention to is, in a very appropriate professional manner, actively managing that brand, whether it's responding to comments on social media, addressing negative feedback that may be in Google reviews or that sort of thing. You want to be careful, because you don't want to shoot off messages that could be perceived as, poor customer service, those sorts of things. But they're looking to see, how does this organization address things that may not be necessarily as positive, but also how did they handle the positive reviews? Was there acknowledgement of those as well? We are seeing a ton of candidates wanting to know pay and benefits right off the bat. So when it comes to job postings, and we'll talk more about this, that information should be in the job postings. That information should be immediately available from the start, in the beginning of the process, all the way through the process. Long gone are the days of you waiting till the final round of interviews to start talking about money and benefits. Okay. That should be one of the very first conversations that you have. Okay. You also need to be competitive in your pay. We've talked a lot about this. You're hearing a lot about it. If you have not done a market wage survey for your organization within your industry across a certain region, you are behind the times. Be mindful that also it's not just about getting people in the door, it's also about retaining them. So it's not uncommon for us to see organizations right now, and this is not a new issue, but because the market has been more competitive in the last few years, they're bringing in people at much higher rates than people that have been in the position for some time. And that creates wage compression. So you have to also make adjustments to the people that are also within your organization already that have been with you for some time. By not addressing wage compression issues, you do open yourself up to Equal Pay Act, EEOC charges, all of these other things that complicate the matter there as well. Thinking also about your employer brand, how do we address growth and development? A lot of what we're seeing in the particular candidate pool right now is that these individuals are really focused on, what are you going to do for me? How are you going to invest in me as an employee? Again, shift in mindset from the traditional, what are you as an employee going to do here? We're looking at what type of career pathing, what type of training opportunities are we going to provide? Is there, tuition reimbursement or school reimbursement, some of which has tax advantages. So talk to your CPA about those. Paying off student debt. There are ways to make yourself competitive in this market, whether you're a small business or even a large business. That can show we as an organization are invested in your growth and development. And then we have to look at candidate goals. Does your brand support that? Again, a lot of individuals are looking at, here are my core individual values, whatever those may be. And they're looking at, does this brand, does this organization align with those? Is this a company that I can dive into, feel good about working for? And really make sure that there's an alignment there. So when we talk about job postings, or even when we're in the interviews or we're marketing, all of these things, you really want to emphasize your company values. And it's more than just your traditional mission statement, vision statement, and company goals, right? One, you need to talk about why are we a good employer? What do we offer? Why are we an industry leader? All of these things matter, and you want to make sure that you're appropriately marketing yourself as well. Also, you want to make sure that we're being inclusive. Be mindful of pronouns in your job postings. Be mindful of stereotypical language, all of these things, because we want to make sure that we're reaching the masses in these postings and in our brand as well. If you have not noticed, right now, work-life balance incredibly matters, even to positions that are working remotely or employees that are working remotely. So if you are an organization that has the ability to offer flex time, work from home, a hybrid work environment, what have you, that needs to be at the forefront. I heard a recent podcast not too long ago, and it was talking about, yes, we're seeing a smaller shift in job postings that are noted as remote or hybrid. But what we are seeing is there's still an increasing demand from the candidate pool, that is what they want. That is what they need for work-life balance. And so there are going to be certain positions that works for, and other positions that it does not. So you have to look at one, business need, our ability to provide that, our ability to manage those type of hybrid or remote environments. But that is not going away. When we were knee deep in the pandemic, a lot of organizations had to do remote or hybrid, because of regulations and scheduling and all of those things. And people got used to it. And we did see statistical increase in motivation and general employee happiness. And so that's kind of hard to give up from a candidate perspective, especially if they've been working remote or they've been working in a hybrid environment. They're not going to want to give that up and make a shift to 100% back in the office. So keep that in mind. Again, you have to do what's right for your organization, but know that people are still heavily searching for those remote or hybrid environments. The other thing that's a huge piece of your employer brand is talking about employee health and well-being, which obviously ties beautifully into this group because we are part of a bankers insurance, a professional group of clients and employees. But when we looked at a recent Deloitte study, 80% of the respondents said that promoting employee well-being was important to the organization's success. And it's true. Again, benefits, and not just your traditional medical, dental, vision. Obviously, those are important, But, paid time off, short-term disability, long-term disability, EAPs, wellness programs. And there's a lot of creativity that can come around those. Obviously, they have to be compliantly structured because there are a ton of rules surrounding those types of fringe benefits. But they're looking at how are you as an employer going to make sure that my health and well-being is important to you, and that the company is making sure their employees' well-being is taken care of as well. Okay, so with all of that said, we almost need to reimagine the recruitment process. Yes, the employer brand. Yes, you need to look at your hiring needs. A lot of individuals have been doing, we call it job packing, but they've been, because of attrition or turnover or whatever it may be, they've been wearing multiple hats within the organization, or doing, the company has restructured a little bit, so they've taken on more or given some away. And so you need to look at what is the right number of people that we need in order for this position, this process, this department to run effectively. And the other key there is, if you have the right people in place, typically you can do more with less because they're motivated, it's the right fit, they've been given the appropriate training and development, and there's trust and respect within the team, and it works. So that allows, from a compensation standpoint, to also look at, yes, this department budget is allocated for this, but if instead of having 8 people, I can be just as effective with 6 really, really high performers, there's more money to spread out amongst those 6 versus 8. Okay, so you have to look at that. Make sure that your company obviously has a careers page, that your brand, that your company cites through LinkedIn and all of these online posting mediums is accurately reflective. It is clear, concise, about benefits, about, what the rate of pay is for that position, and where they sent that information when they apply. Where can they follow up? You don't want it just going into this black hole of a website as well. You should also be challenging your posting sites. Where are you getting the best return on investment? You're going to have to obviously pay to post positions. And it's not cheap either. A lot of them are structured where you pay based on clicks, or you can set up a monthly budget to run for X number of days. But look, if you're not getting anything out of Facebook, stop posting to Facebook. If you're getting a ton of response from Facebook, continue doing it. But you have to look at what's working and what's not working. Also thinking outside of the box from your traditional job posting sites, right? So hit the street. Get out there, start passing out business cards. Have you run into somebody that gave wonderful customer service at a different organization? Now be careful with like poaching, but passing their information, networking, employee referrals, all of these things are what organizations of all sizes across the country are doing, and they're really focusing on more of that relationship networking piece to find and recruit individuals as well. Okay. With your job postings and your job descriptions, challenge your titles. Because remember, when people are searching for positions, a lot of times they're just typing in project manager or customer service representative or outside sales. So you need to make sure that your title is not unreflective of what the job is actually doing. You also want to look at the language that's included in the job postings, making sure that it's inclusive, it's not sketchy in nature, for lack of a better phrase, and that it's clear and concise. When people are looking at these job postings, they're quickly scanning. 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And if the buzzwords are not popping on that page, they're moving on. Okay. You also want to challenge your interview process. General rule of thumb is we are seeing, traditionally you would do an initial telephone interview and then, a follow-up secondary could be telephone or bring them in person. You may have a third in person. You may have panels, all of these things. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. And if you need, based on the position, because of supervisory responsibilities or just the industry, fine, that's great. But you have to remember that we need to actively push through this process. The length of time now that candidates are looking at applying and hearing back from the company is like 48 hours, 72 hours. Okay. Typically, if you don't catch them within the first few days, they've moved on. Okay. So you don't want to drag out this process. You want to make sure that's comprehensive. You're getting the appropriate information that you need, that whoever else needs to be involved in this process is able to participate. But you don't, gone are the days of 3-4 week long process of interviewing. Okay. Gone are the days of hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long interviews. Typically we're seeing, 30-minute short little spurts. Okay. And you also want to make sure that your application process is frictionless. Okay.
Real quick, can I interject a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned something that I wanted, that really spoke to me being in marketing. You talked about the brand and making sure things line up with the brand. And we do focus on things like Google reviews, but I'm unfamiliar and maybe I need to become more familiar with, like, what are, other than Google, you mentioned like Glassdoor, what are the other main human resource like websites where a candidate may research a company?
Yeah.
Like, what are those
So
review sites?
that's a great question. So, right, wrong, or indifferent. I would say that your two biggest ones are salary.com and Glassdoor. Okay. So individuals can go on and anonymously report their current compensation and benefits, but also leave reviews as employees of the company on anything that they want.
So,
Good, bad, indifferent. And it doesn't mean that it's accurately reflective of your current organization either. It very well could be. But I would check Glassdoor, because
okay.
you'll see employees that are like, oh, this is the best place to work. And then you'll see other people in other comments that are like, this is the worst. And they may name certain managers or departments or locations. And it's important to not overreact to that information. Again, it may not be reflective, or it may cause us as leaders to take a step back and need to challenge information that's presented, be reflective upon that. Is there truth somewhere in the mix? And work to address that, because again, we are in a social media society. TikTok, you're seeing a ton of reviews from TikTok employees about experiences or coworkers or companies that they're working for. And that puts us into a whole different conversation about the legality of that and National Labor Relations Act and terminations and all of these things. But your information, your business is out there, whether we like it or not. And so it's important to know what people are saying.
Right, right. So then, like, I understand from a perspective on how we obtain like good reviews for, for Google. We request when, someone's had a good interaction. We say, hey, would you mind, giving us a review? How have you seen companies that do this well, like getting good reviews, I should say, on Glassdoor, salary.com, Indeed? I mean, that's different because it's left by employees. Like, are they asking employees, or is that taboo, or how does that work?
Yeah, most are not asking employees to do reviews on Glassdoor. This is a perfect, this type of situation, leads me kind of into a conversation separately about employee opinion surveys. Because every organization should be surveying their staff once a year, every other year, in a variety of statistically valid and reliable categories with appropriate questions to get a pulse on the organization to avoid people blasting you all over the internet. And that's the safest way to do it. So typically most, larger, I shouldn't say large, because we do them for companies that have 25 employees as well. But an opinion survey internally is a great way to gain a better insight as to what's working, what's not. Doesn't stop anybody from going online and saying what they want to say, but it helps bring it to the forefront so that the organization can work through organizational action plans to reinforce or address areas of opportunity. And that's the same thing I would say, going on Glassdoor. I mean, sure, could you ask your employees to go on Glassdoor and review you? You could. It's a little tacky.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's a good
So,
question.
no, and if anyone else has questions, I just wanted to bring it up, type them into the chat feature and we'll try to address them as we go along. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I think is really important as we continue to navigate this very weird market is training and development for your managers with screening and hiring is really important. First impressions, obviously, are important. Making sure that they know what they can ask, what they cannot legally ask, that they are aware and avoiding unconscious bias in their practices, that they are actively managing the candidate experience, showing respect, courtesy, and more importantly, responsiveness. Um, you know, coming from a HR perspective, I do recruitment for clients all across the country for higher level positions. And, you can't just let people sit out there. If you've made a decision or you're not moving them through the process after they've interviewed once, you need to follow up. It's common courtesy, it's respect. If you've made a decision not to hire them, don't wait weeks and have them email you multiple times to be like, hey, how's it going? Some people don't care. They'll move on and just wait for you to call, but other people are waiting for that follow-up. So that's really important because when they don't have a good experience, again, they can go blast you on social media. From a personal perspective, my husband was searching back in the spring for a position with a very, very large company in the Richmond area, very, very large. And he had a really unfortunate negative experience through the interview process towards the very end. They never circled back with him. He emailed multiple times because they were supposed to be making a decision. And then finally they're like, oh yeah, sorry, we went in a different direction. That was it. And that's fine. It wasn't about that, but that changed his perspective of that organization as a whole. And again, talking to other people, they're like, oh yeah, I actually had that same experience. So their brand and the perception of the area in which their organization is operating in is based on the candidate's experience as well. So keep that in mind. Make sure that also all of your interview questions are behavioral based interviews. Tell me about a time when, describe to me how you did this. Don't let managers go rogue and start asking weird questions. Or my favorite is, tell me about yourself, or what do you do in your free time? Two major red flags. One, they're going to tell you everything that you can't legally write down. And it doesn't matter. Stick to behavioral based questions that look at past behavior as the best predictor of future behavior. Okay. Here's your overview of the hiring process. We've talked about identifying the need. You need to prepare. There should be standardized job postings already for every single position within the organization, making sure it's legally compliant with your EOE statement, that you have touch points in place to source candidates. Again, if you're posting a job on Indeed, you should be checking those responses every single day, calling out people. Again, fast paced. Making sure you have nice screening in place with regard to interviews, who needs to be in the interviews, what questions are you asking per each round. And then, of course, any of your pre-employment checks like background, drug test. Yes, you still should be drug testing, and that may be a conversation for another day with regard to the marijuana stuff. But sure, references, any sort of personality profiles, all of that stuff needs to be post-job offer with signed authorizations. Then we make the hire, and the new hire orientation is important. So I mentioned job descriptions. These help in a variety of ways. Yes, we use them to justify our wage and salary structures. The job description is what you should be using to evaluate job performance and also help you analyze who is actively qualified to perform the job, but also it's a great piece within the screening and hiring process, especially during the interview. All of your job interview questions should come from the job description. Tell me about a time when you dealt with an angry customer and you were able to successfully turn the situation around with service recovery. Now, tell me, how did you do it? And what did you learn from it? Now, tell me about a time when you were unable to turn around a upset customer using service recovery methods. What went wrong? All of these things. You always want to ask good and bad examples, but all of the questions come from the job description. So make sure that you have reviewed those, that they're accurate, they're reflective of the job, they're qualitative, they're quantitatively written, because it helps also forecast training needs. It's not uncommon right now for employers to hire individuals that don't have all of the experience that they're looking for, or a different education or a background that the job description says, because they are committed to the training and development piece to bring them up to successful performance standards. So the other thing, and why job descriptions are really important, is related to the Americans with Disabilities Act having to document and show what are essential functions and non-essential functions of the job, so that if we have somebody that has a mental or physical disability, whether it be through the screening and hiring process or even once they're in the job, we know what functions need to be potentially accommodated under the ADA versus those that do not. Okay. So I mentioned the ADA, looking at what functions are essential, the amount of time spent performing the job function, because you may have candidates that require a reasonable accommodation during the interview or onboarding process as well. So again, with recruiting, challenge where you're posting ads, whether you're doing it on print or online. Make sure that you're grabbing their attention, you're using the appropriate buzzwords, you're selling the candidate on the job. Why do they want to come work for you? It's not the other way around anymore. What do we offer them, and why should they want to come work for us? Make sure you also tell them how to respond. Where do they send their resume? To whom? Do they email it? Do they need to submit it through, this online portal system? Make sure that they know step by step what the process is to apply. And then you want to target your audience. Certain positions are going to require particular backgrounds or certifications, or they may have a professional designation. Target that. If you're looking for a CPA, you should be posting your job on the Virginia Society of CPAs forum. That's all of the CPA's professional organization in the state. So, target your audience. Obviously, we have our screening tools. Reminder that when somebody submits a resume or an application for employment under federal law, you must maintain those for 12 months from the date of receipt. That is federal law. Make sure that you're keeping them, whether it's electronically or in print. You have your interview, your reference, your background, and your assessments that I previously mentioned. Do not let a resume get cold. Right now, speed is everything. Okay. However, that does not mean that you speed through the process and you forego the appropriate steps. Within 10 days, the top 10% of all job seekers are gone. Okay. And it's true. So they're either finding another job or they've stopped looking. It's not uncommon, and I've experienced it myself with certain people. They've applied, for a position that I'm recruiting for one of my clients. And 3 days later, when I call and say, hey, can I, we need to set up an initial telephone interview, they're like, oh, well, I just got a job offer. Okay. And it's frustrating, but that's the market that we're in right now. So things that you want to look for on an application or resume, obviously, if it's an application looking for wages earned, but certain states don't permit asking this, so you need to be careful. Looking for education, employment dates, why they left their past jobs. People don't leave for better opportunities. They leave because the hours of work didn't work for them. They didn't get along with their manager. The commute was too long. There was, they weren't allowed to work hybrid anymore. All of these things. Okay. So these are just some tips on what you can look for on an application or a resume. Also some red flags, rounded off dates, non-specific educational information, lack of progression in duties and responsibilities. All of these things could be indications that the individual was not particularly a high performing individual. Now, those are areas of opportunity for us to probe during our line of questioning. Well, I see that there's, a gap between company A and company B. Talk to me a little bit about that. What was going on there? Why did you choose to leave? Talk to me about your transition. What went on? What were you doing to maintain your industry knowledge while you were in between jobs? How did you stay on top of the industry? So there are ways to kind of dig and probe in there that you want to be mindful of. Also, here's something that I think is really important to understand is that we've been conditioned over the years to look at job hoppers as bad, and look at people that were with an organization 1 year, 2 years, and they're jumping around as being uncommitted. And I appreciate that as well, but in today's market, especially with the changes in generations, we can't necessarily hold it against candidates that they have hopped around a little bit. Okay. The mentality of job hopping needs to not be held against them. Let's put it that way. It's very reflective of the generations, because of growth and development or benefits or opportunities there. And it's the market that we're in. So keep that in the back of your mind. When you do the interview, obviously you need to build rapport, ask your good open-ended behavioral-based questions, probe. If they say something, you're like, oh, well, that's interesting. Tell me more. Or if something isn't jiving, ask the question a different way to see if there's consistency there. Some people will have interview silence, meaning if you're asking them to recall a particular situation, they may need a moment to, recall or put together, their thoughts on that. So tolerate that. Yes, it can be uncomfortable. But also, interview silence may encourage them to provide more detail as well. Take good descriptive notes. There should be interview guides. I mentioned that. So, predetermined questions that come from the job description for every single position. You never, ever, ever write on the resume or the application for employment. Also, be mindful about what you write down. Do not write down anything or ask anything related to medical, children, working overtime, marriage status, ADA related. Don't ask any of that. Okay. Don't ask anything that would be considered a protected class either. So take good notes so that you can recall and review and make sure that this person aligns with what you're looking for. And if they're not, then we move on. Also, you want to be prepared to answer questions yourself. Again, a lot of organizations wait to talk money at the very end. Don't do that. Talk about the team. If they ask questions about the dynamics of the team or the benefits that you're offering or what the pay range is, be transparent with that. Be prepared to answer questions about in the first 6 months, what do you see this position doing? What do you see as, struggles for the department? Be transparent. Employees want to know what they're potentially walking into. So, you don't want to air all the dirty laundry, but you want to be open and honest and factual. Because what we don't want to have happen is somebody get into a new position and they're like, whoa, this is not what it was like. I didn't sign up for this. You told me the position was doing this, and really it's not doing that. So here are some no-nos for employment interviewing, talking about bankruptcy, children, marital status, family, oh, you coach little league soccer on your free time. All of these things are big, big, big no-nos. Yes, I still encourage you to do reference checks, professional reference checks. Try to talk to the former supervisor. Also, you have to obviously get signed written authorization to check references. You cannot just call up somebody and say, hey, give me the lowdown. Also, check with HR. Verify what their position title was. When did they start? When did they end? Perhaps rate of pay. A lot of people are inflating their rate of pay. So let's just say, for example, I'm currently making $75,000 a year, but I am applying for a job at your organization, and I'm saying, I need 100,000, and maybe I do, which is fine because we're seeing candidates make transitions right now and getting 20 to 30% pay increase because the market is so competitive. So you want to know if what they told you that they were currently making or what they're looking for is kind of in line, okay? If I fill out on my application that my rate of pay is $22 an hour and I sign that application and you verify with HR that no, Jamie was only making 18 an hour, technically I lied on my application, which could be a terminable offense, okay? So reference checks are important, as is drug testing, especially for safety sensitive positions. You want to make sure that we are doing pre-employment drug testing. Again, it has to be post job offer, contingent job offer. If you were doing it in-house yourself, as a reminder, if somebody does test positive under SAMHSA law, you are to send that person out to be retested in a designated facility where the medical review officer can, double check the sample. Getting a lot of questions also regarding the marijuana piece, because many of our states are making medicinal marijuana legal. I have a lot of clients that are still pre-employment, post-accident, reasonable suspicion drug testing for marijuana. That's totally fine. Just know that you can't automatically deny employment because somebody tests positive, at least here in Virginia, For marijuana, we have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, great. Do you have a registration card? Yes or no? If they do, then we're possibly covered under Americans with Disabilities Act, and we have to explore an interactive, reasonable accommodation process for them. Okay. I also have some employers that are pulling the marijuana piece off of the pre-employment, but they're leaving it for reasonable suspicion and post-accident. Okay. Now, if you have DOT drivers, marijuana's got to stay for all of it. You can't pull it off. If you are doing any sort of pre-employment testing, like agility tests, knowledge tests, competency tests, typing, personality, all of that, just remember that these tests do have limitations, right? Yes, they can be good indicators, but they can't be the end all be all. And that, again, the tests need to make sense for the position that they are being hired for. You want to make sure that, it makes sense, that it is appropriate for the job. And then, of course, you make your final decision. You always want to hire the most qualified individual for the job. Why? Because under Title VII, whether it be ADA, EEOC, all of this stuff, individuals that feel like they may have been discriminated through the screening and hiring process, or in promotion, do have the ability to file an alleged charge of discrimination. So you need to be able to justify to the Department of Labor, I didn't hire this person because the person I did hire had 4 years more of experience and 2 extra certifications. So we always have to be able to justify our employment decisions. When you do your offer letter, make sure that it's outlining the position, the location, the compensation, the benefits, when they start, information they need to bring for day one, such as I-9 documents. Also a reminder on that, you cannot tell them to bring in a driver's license and social security card. Yes, most people do. Most people may also bring in a birth certificate, but you need to give them the list of appropriate documents that is included with the I-9 form. You also want to include, do they need to respond? When do they need to let you know whether they accept or decline? Have a signed written offer letter from them as well. Don't skirt on your new hire orientation. Typically, first 90 to even 6 months is really, really important. You spent all of this time and effort trying to get them in the door. And what we see often is that organizations bring them in, their orientation consists of just the paperwork, and they kind of like dump them into the department, and we just, let them loose. There needs to be weekly, monthly, quarterly check-ins with the supervisor. You need to be able to establish a relationship with this person. Statistically speaking, employees leave the organization because of the manager. Okay. So you want to make sure that the manager is really focusing on relationship building, buddy systems, making sure the on-the-job training is being effective, that they've been oriented, that they've been supported. All of these things matter in your orientation. And here's just a range of approaches to onboarding. You could include training and roundtables, meeting with key insiders, individual mentoring and HR support, site visits, job shadowing programs. All of these things can be included in your onboarding process. Don't forget about informal and formal onboarding. Obviously, the informal is going to be what they see and hear and learn from coworkers, from people in other departments, from just observations. And we want to make sure that that informal onboarding is reflective upon the organization, the department, and the supervisor expectations as well. Versus your formal onboarding, which is more of your policy, your procedure, your job tasks, all of those things. Typically, we see with engagement, the time to re-engage staff really is between years 3 and 5. Okay, this is why, and David was asking earlier about the reviews. And I mentioned employee opinion surveys. Why? Because the first year or two, employees are kind of living in their adjustment phase, right? They're learning, they're forming relationships, they're getting acquainted with the organization. But by year 2.5, 3, we start, they're comfortable. They figured it out. And that's a good opportunity to figure out what's working, what's not working. And this is why we do employee opinion surveys, because each grouping of individuals based on their years of service are going to have different needs or wants compared to new hires, right? If I've been there for 5 years, I'm going to have seen a heck of a lot more than somebody that's been here 6 months. I'm going to have different opinions, different needs, different wants, different feedback on leadership and benefits and all of these things, because I've had time to see and use them, right? So something that I encourage are opinion surveys. You could also consider stay interview questions as part of your employee annual review process. What makes you want to come to work? What would make you leave for another job? Talk to me about recognition. Do you get enough? Do you want more? How do you want to receive that recognition? What is meaningful to you in terms of recognition? So again, stay interviews are separate from an employee opinion survey. An employee opinion survey is going to look at, 20 different types of categories with statistically valid and reliable questions with data. And there's a whole review process and feedback surveys and all of these things that go through helping us create an organizational action plan. The stay interview questions are an opportunity for your leader or HR during the evaluation process to kind of, continue to foster that relationship, to make that process more of a crucial conversation and show that their relationship with the organization matters. Don't forget about your generations. No generation is better or worse than the other. They all just have different ways of doing things. We're moving really out of the baby boomer generation at this point. Most of them have retired, if not are, on their way out the next 1 or 2 years. Okay. So make sure that you are focusing on transitioning there and making sure that your leadership approach to each generation is customized. I know we're getting short on time, so I want to wrap up with these next few slides. There are some must-haves that we see for retention in 22, even into 23. Make sure that you are investing in employee career development. Having a formalized training and development program, offering outside training certifications, mentorship programs. Those things are really important to staff, and we're seeing that based on a recent LinkedIn survey. But also don't just solely focus on manager development. Yes, they need that leadership skill. They need to understand HR requirements. They need to know how to appropriately manage performance, coaching, counseling, discipline, leadership, communication, conflict resolution. But also don't be that organization that is solely focusing or only providing manager training and not non-supervisory training opportunities as well. Challenge your recognition program. Recently from SHRM, 68% of all HR individuals said recognition was important for retention, but many of them don't have formal recognition programs. So how are you recognizing and supporting your staff? And it doesn't always have to be money. Trust me, money is nice, but Employee Appreciation Week or month, giving them extra PTO, providing them with, awards and other things. So challenge and make sure that you have a recognition program. We've talked about work-life balance that will maintain and be a priority for individuals. We also talked about compensation practices. As I mentioned, most people are looking for anywhere from a 15 to 25% increase in their compensation when they are searching for new opportunities. There are ways that you can incentivize employees with bonuses, with commissions, other incentives like car, phone, and internet. Do not just willy-nilly implement those things. Bonuses and commissions, particularly for hourly staff or salaried non-exempt, have wage and hour implications. So they have to be done appropriately. Same thing with sign-on bonuses or retention bonuses. Anything that is tied to a performance metric, such as attendance or length of service or safety or what have you, needs to be included for purposes of overtime for non-exempt individuals. So, create your pathways for growth. Career mapping is crucial. And then also look at your benefit package. And this might be a little sensitive given the group, but traditional medical, dental, vision is great. Certain organizations are challenging their 401k and whether that's even valuable to employees anymore. Same thing with short-term or long-term disability insurance. If and I say that because, for example, I have a client that just went to unlimited PTO for all of their staff. Take as much time as you need, it's 100% paid. And so when we were looking at it, I was like, well, you really don't need a short-term disability policy anymore because short-term is not going to kick in if there's paid leave available based on the way the policy is written. So don't mess with any of your benefits, but challenge, what do employees want to see? And this goes back to my conversation about doing the opinion survey. Again, how do you know what they want or what they need or what's helpful to them in their life if we're not asking those questions? Okay. Challenge your culture. Make sure that we have, excellent leadership, that employees feel like they have a voice or a choice, that diversity, equity, and inclusion is within your organization and that it's actively promoted and supported. Look at your workplace hybrid, remote work options, flexibility there as well, supporting their well-being with wellness programs, EAPs, and that's a great opportunity for you to touch base with your account rep and make sure that you have those things in place for your staff through your benefit package. Here are just some examples of wellness programs and incentives that you can provide. Cost incentives, low or no cost incentives, progress-based, participation-based, performance. Now remember that some of these have legal implications as well. So don't just roll them out without, dotting all of our I's and crossing our T's. And here are 12 alternative ideas for wellness incentives and rewards. Everybody loves food. Lunches, meal delivery, event tickets, gift cards. Now, again, remember, gift cards are taxable per IRS regulations. So don't just be passing those out. Some people are giving out trips, fitness memberships, holistic health services such as massage, chiropractic, gym gear, paying for apps or subscriptions to meditate, for sleep, healthy eating sort of things. Wellness incentives could also be home office equipment, providing ergonomic chairs or standing desks. So there's a lot of creativity that you can provide with wellness programs and incentives there as well. So David, I know, oh my gosh, I'm right on the hour too. I'm so proud of myself. I know we threw a lot at you, so I'll make sure that David gets a copy of the PowerPoint so that when he sends out the recording, you guys can have that as well. Do we have any questions or comments?
We don't, and I just wanted to mention that in case the chat's not working for you, I did enable the Q&A. There's a little thing that popped up and said, hey, chat may not be working for everybody. So I enabled the Q&A just in case. But I do have one quick question myself, because you mentioned, Jamie, and some that I hadn't even thought of, which was, hey, salary first, and have that upfront in the conversation. So can you let us know, is that something typically like when you go to Indeed or Glassdoor or whatever, or wherever you're posting these things, is that something that is usually posted publicly now? Like, in other
Yeah.
words, the range, okay?
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing you're seeing, I would say 75% now of job postings, and that's nationwide. It may not be industry specific, that are on Indeed saying, okay, look, I'm hiring for a production manager. And it'll have the title and the description, and like quarter down the page, you have the opportunity to list the hiring range.
Hmm.
And I strongly suggest that you do that. One, for a number of reasons. One, people want to know before they're applying, is this like a $40,000 job or is this a $75,000 job? Um, because what you don't want to have happen is people that are looking for 125
Mhm.
apply for this job,
Right, right.
and one, you're taking time to call them out, and let's just say you're like, oh wow, gosh, this person, they're perfect. You call them, and inevitably you take them through a round or two of interviews, and then you get down to the money conversation and find out they're looking for $35,000 more than what I can afford to pay at the max of my budget. And now you've wasted your time, you've wasted their time. They're disappointed, you're disappointed, because everybody that you look at after, you're not going to love. I've seen it happen way too many times. Talk about the money up front. One of the questions that I list the hourly or salary range in all of my job postings now. And two, one of the top 5 questions that I have in the initial telephone screen is, based on your experience, your education, your background, what type of hiring range are you seeking?
Okay,
And some
correct.
people will say, I'm currently making this. Or they may flip the question back on you as a hiring manager, which is fine, and say, well, what is the hiring range? Again, be ready to discuss that,
Okay.
because you want to
Yeah,
be
good point.
respectful. If they're way outside of the range, then you can say, look, I really appreciate that. Looking at your resume, sure, you've got a ton of experience. Unfortunately, our hiring range is only $18 an hour. Um, I would love to take you through the process. If you think that based on what you need, this would work, but I want to be respectful of you and your time as well. So, if you need to think about it, let me know. But this is our hiring range. And you're well outside of that, unfortunately. And I've had really good success with it. People want to have that conversation up front.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate that. And I did want to mention, like we had said before, if you have other questions that pop up after the
Yep.
call, by all means, please talk to your sales exec and say, hey, how do I get in touch with Sesco? And they will take you through the process.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else, Jamie, you wanna mention? I'm not seeing any other questions pop up.
I don't think so. If they have questions, I'm sure you'll provide our information, but
Will do.
let me know. I know it's a tough market. It's a very frustrating time for a lot of people. So hang in there. Um, just do what you can, and remember to focus also on the ones that you currently have that are good employees, because we don't want to lose them either.
No, really good point, and been a lot of good detail in this. Truly appreciate your time and
Yeah.
taking the time for us. And again, we will send out this to everyone who registered, everyone that's on the call. We're going to send out the recording plus the slides. So just wanted to say thank you guys for attending, and we'll be in touch again soon. Thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.